$600,000 is not enough to feel rich. It may not be enough to quit your job tomorrow. But once your investments reach this number, something powerful happens. Your money can begin building wealth faster than you can. And if you handle that moment incorrectly, one emotional decision could erase years of progress. Stay until the end, because I'll show you exactly what changes at $600,000 and the two mistakes that become extremely expensive once you cross that line. If you want finance explained without confusing jargon or empty promises, subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Now, let's look at the math. Meet Daniel. Daniel is 47 years old. He earns a good salary, avoids expensive debt, and has invested consistently for nearly 2 decades. After years of automatic contributions, employer matches, market crashes, and slow recoveries, his portfolio finally reaches $600,000. But Daniel does not feel wealthy. He still drives the same car. He still worries about medical bills. He still checks prices at the grocery store. And every retirement calculator seems to tell him that he needs at least $1 million, sometimes $1.5 million or more. So from Daniel's perspective, $600,000 feels like an unfinished job. But financially, he has already crossed an important threshold. Because wealth does not suddenly become powerful at $1 million. It becomes powerful when the growth of your investments begins exceeding the amount you can personally contribute. Imagine Daniel invests $3,000 every month. That equals $36,000 per year, a strong savings rate. Now suppose his $600,000 portfolio produces a 6% return over a particular year. That would be $36,000 in investment growth. In other words, Daniel's portfolio just contributed as much to his future as Daniel did. He worked, earned a salary, controlled his spending, and invested $36,000. His money potentially created another $36,000 without working a single hour. This is the real meaning of the $600,000 rule. It is not a guaranteed return. It is not a universal retirement target. And it is certainly not a promise that the stock market will rise 6% every year. It is a crossover point. At approximately $600,000, a reasonably diversified portfolio can begin producing annual gains comparable to what even a serious investor contributes. Before this point, Daniel was doing most of the work. After this point, compounding becomes his financial partner. Here is a simple way to estimate your own crossover number. Take the amount you invest every year and divide it by your assumed long-term rate of return. If you invest $12,000 annually and assume an average 6% return, your crossover point is approximately $200,000. If you invest $24,000 per year, the number is around $400,000. If you invest $36,000 annually, it is approximately $600,000. Your personal number may be different, but the principle remains the same. Eventually, the portfolio becomes a more powerful wealth-building tool than your monthly contributions. And that changes the game. At $50,000, saving another $10,000 can transform your balance. At $600,000, that same $10,000 still matters, but a normal market movement can add or remove several times that amount. A 10% increase represents $60,000. A 20% increase represents $120,000. But a 20% decline also represents a temporary loss of $120,000. That is where the emotional danger begins. Percentages feel harmless when the balance is small. If someone has $20,000 invested and the market falls 20%, the account declines by $4,000. That hurts, but it may feel manageable. When Daniel's $600,000 portfolio falls 20%, he sees $120,000 disappear on the screen. The percentage is identical. The emotional experience is completely different. Daniel may understand that market declines are normal. He may know that recoveries have historically followed major downturns, but $120,000 does not feel like a percentage. It feels like several years of saving. It feels like a small house in certain parts of the country. It feels like something he must protect immediately. That feeling can push Daniel into the most damaging decision available, selling after the decline. He tells himself he will reinvest when conditions become safer. But markets rarely announce the beginning of a recovery. Prices can rebound while the headlines still look terrible. By the time everything feels comfortable again, a large part of the recovery may already be over. That means Daniel successfully converts a temporary decline into a permanent loss. At this level, your behavior can matter more than your ability to find the perfect investment. If this is changing the way you see the $600,000 mark, subscribe and share this video with someone building toward retirement. Because reaching the number is only half the challenge. The next part is learning how to live from it. A common retirement guideline says that someone may begin by withdrawing approximately 4% of a diversified portfolio, then adjust future withdrawals for inflation. 4% of $600,000 equals $24,000 per year, or $2,000 per month. That does not create a luxurious retirement by itself. But the portfolio may not be the person's only income source. As of June 2026, the average monthly Social Security benefit paid to retired workers was approximately $2.084. For a hypothetical retiree receiving that amount, Social Security would provide roughly $25,000 per year. Add a $24,000 portfolio withdrawal, and total gross income approaches $49,000 annually before taxes, Medicare costs, and other deductions. For a couple with two benefits, the calculation could look different. For someone with a paid-off home and modest expenses, $600,000 might support a comfortable retirement. For someone paying high rent, carrying debt, supporting relatives, or facing major healthcare costs, it may not be enough. That is why $600,000 should never be treated as a magical retirement number. Your expenses determine what your wealth can actually buy. There is another risk Daniel must understand. Suppose he retires with $600,000 just before a major market decline. During his first year, the portfolio falls 20%, leaving approximately $480,000. Daniel still needs money for groceries, insurance, housing, and transportation, so he withdraws $24,000. The problem is not only the decline. He must now sell more shares when prices are low. Those shares are no longer invested when the market eventually recovers. This is called sequence of returns risk. Two retirees can experience the same average return over 20 years, but receive those returns in a different order. The retiree who experiences strong years early may be fine. The retiree who suffers major losses during the first few years, while also making withdrawals, can face a much more difficult outcome. One way to reduce that danger is to maintain a reserve of cash or short-term relatively stable assets. During a severe market decline, Daniel can temporarily use that reserve instead of selling stocks at depressed prices. The reserve may not generate exciting returns. That is not its job. Its purpose is to give the long-term investments time to recover. However, fear creates another mistake. Once Daniel realizes how much he could lose during a downturn, he may move almost everything into cash. That feels safe, but safety has more than one definition. Cash reduces short-term volatility, yet inflation gradually reduces its purchasing power. An overly conservative portfolio could leave Daniel exposed to a different danger, living longer than his money. The goal is not to eliminate every decline. The goal is to hold an appropriate mix of investments that Daniel can realistically keep during both good and bad markets. Then comes the opposite mistake, lifestyle expansion. Daniel sees $600,000 and begins feeling financially successful. He purchases a more expensive vehicle. He reduces his monthly contributions. He renovates the house using money from the portfolio. Each decision appears affordable by itself. Together, they weaken the compounding machine at the moment it is becoming most productive. Consider two hypothetical paths. Daniel leaves $600,000 invested for another 15 years and earns an average 6% annual return. Without adding another dollar, the balance could grow to approximately $1.44 million. At 7%, it could grow to around $1.66 million. Those are projections, not guarantees, but they demonstrate the power of time. The difference between $600,000 and more than $1 million may not require a brilliant stock pick. It may simply require patience. That is the deepest lesson behind this rule. Building your first $100,000 depends heavily on your income and savings rate. Building beyond $600,000 increasingly depends on time, diversification, fees, taxes, and your ability to avoid emotional decisions. The habits that helped you accumulate money must also evolve. During the early years, action creates progress. Earn more. Save more. Invest more. After the portfolio becomes substantial, unnecessary action can become the threat. You do not need to react to every headline. You do not need to predict every recession. You do not need to replace a sensible investment plan every time the market becomes uncomfortable. Sometimes the highest value financial decision is doing nothing. That does not mean ignoring your portfolio completely. You should still rebalance when necessary, review your risk level, control investment costs, update beneficiaries, and plan how different accounts will be taxed. But those decisions should follow a written strategy, not fear, excitement, or social media predictions. So what really changes at $600,000? First, the portfolio may begin producing as much annual growth as a disciplined person contributes. Second, normal market movements become large enough to test your emotions. Third, the account may be capable of producing meaningful retirement income when combined with Social Security or other income sources. And finally, avoiding major mistakes becomes more valuable than chasing extraordinary returns. $600,000 is not a finish line. It is the point where the machine starts becoming powerful. Your job is no longer only to feed it. Your job is to protect it, give it time, and stop your emotions from interrupting the process. If you are working toward this number, comment, "My money will work for me." Subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it with someone who believes wealth only begins at $1 million. Because the most important financial milestone may not be the number that allows you to stop working. It may be the number where your money finally starts working harder than you do.